Welcome back to the table, friends. I am your humble host, Gray DMs, and with me as always is my co-host and co-conspirator, Owen.
Hi there.
You are listening to Tabletop by Night, a weekly podcast where we continue our exploration of Vampire the Masquerade. Tonight we gather around the table to answer the question, who really understands the beast?
Highlander understands the beast.
Dude, I was going to say an exploration of Highlander. I was going to throw the joke out. None of you will understand why we're laughing about that. Just go look at last week's episode.
Yeah.
So anyway, today we've gathered to talk about essentially the vampires who know the beast most intimately, the Gangrel. So
the angry boys.
The angry boys. Well, yes, they are, to sum it up, Gangrel are nomads who hold closer ties to the wild places than most of their city-bound cousins. They are closer to animal aspects of the beast and are masters of the protean discipline. Not to be confused with the protean
disability. Yeah.
So here's a quote. As always, when we're talking about a clan, we try to get into the headspace. So here's a quote from the Book of Nod.
Okay. Theoretically?
Well, because the Book of Nod is, anyway. In the lore, it's always like, is it really the Book of Nod? Lo, my children, you will walk the earth, wander far and carry these words. Move one step before those who see by the moon. You will hear my voices in your ears like a distant bird's cry or lion's roar, and you will know what to do. You are a child of the beast, a child of darkness, and among the first among kindred. I think I screwed up the last part, but it's okay. It's silly times. So who are the Gangrel? Well, they have some nicknames. This can kind of give us a little intro into like
a little insight.
Space, yeah, a little insight. Sometimes they're called the Clan of the Beast, animals, outlanders, outlaws, wolf's heads, beasts, or ferals.
Okay. I mean, I get most of those.
The Gangrel clan shares a common bane, which is bestial features. So when they frenzy, a physical trait, smell, or behavioral tick emerges that is bestial in nature, so it ties to their wild side.
This is only when they frenzy, though?
Yeah.
Okay.
So these features, though, last after they frenzy for a full night afterwards, kind of like a hangover from the frenzy debauchery.
Tony, you got a tail? Yeah, man. It was crazy the last couple of days.
Kind of, usually it's something more lines of like more pronounced fangs, claws, their eyes become kind of cat-like or something. But basically it shows that in maintaining the connection to their beast and their wild nature, it basically suffuses all aspects of their vampiric nature. So if they do give into the beast, they become probably the most typical, the pinnacle of a monstrous vampire creature.
They look like, what's his face, Michael J. Fox during Teen Wolf.
Teen Wolf, yeah, kind of. Funny enough, as you bring up, Gangrel have a kind of weird tie with their, I wouldn't say cousins, but with the other side of the wolf spectrum.
Distant relatives.
Yeah. Sometimes it's respect. Sometimes it's very much wary animosity. But in some of their histories, they even think they came from the same place.
Oh, that'd be kind of weird.
So all Gangrel also share the same compulsion, which is a feral impulses. So returning to an animalistic state, the vampire regresses to a point where speech is hard, clothes are uncomfortable, and arguments are best settled with teeth and claws.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Gangrel, as we talked last time about the anarchs, Gangrel are often more, they tend towards the autarchus, which are basically the completely unbound from any sort of vampire sect or social kind of structure. Basically, they usually refuse to acknowledge the claim of a prince, archbishop, baron, or any form of sect, clan hierarchy. Usually built into their wild nature and the way they kind of form as a clan, they often share oral histories.
Okay.
And usually these oral histories are flavored to support this nature of independence and this kind of rejection of all authority. As such, it's very hard to nail down what is the most likely truth about their origin. So there are a couple we'll talk about.
Yeah, they don't really seem like the type that would keep a lot of records about that stuff. Like they're not really like into bureaucracy, so to speak.
Very much so. Kind of the antithesis of record keeping and of structure. Which is kind of ironic where one of their poster boys is Beckett, who basically is going around trying to discover information.
Right.
But, if you're going to throw up a middle finger at, any type of authoritarian, even the authoritarian of how you view your own clan. Maybe. So one of their origin stories states that the antediluvian of the Gangrel was named Enoa.
Okay.
Enoa, which basically means the female half of God.
Oh, wow.
And it was said that she was a child of Lilith. I think it's the first time we've mentioned Lilith.
Yeah, we have not mentioned Lilith at this point.
Lilith. So, however, she was abandoned by her mother to a pack of wolves. So this is quite literally the raised by wolves. The animals raised her to become a great predator hunter, and according to Lord Ashton, Enoa took a mate from the pack and bore him children. It is from them that the lupines trace their ancestry.
Okay, got a little bestiality going on this.
Eventually, Enoa left the wolves and traveled to the city of Enoch, where she was embraced, becoming the Gangrel antediluvian. So quite literally, if you believe that version, the werewolves, essentially the Gangrel, are cousins.
Yeah. Well, I mean, technically they're siblings.
Oh, yeah. Some weird family structure over generations. So another kind of version of that is basically that Enoa and her sibling Ravena were siblings. And that after the fallout of the second city, they wandered westward into the vast steppes of Central Asia.
Okay.
So while Noah established her time in summer, Ravna encountered native tribes, mostly nomads and wanderers. They embraced childhood, known as Methuselahs, of the Gangrel and the Ravenos clan. They look up references of the Great Spider Queen, the Great Spider King, and the Tiger Queen. And in this version, Noah is a male, I believe.
Okay.
So this is all pre-Alexandrian, and basically this is some of the scholars have dug up things that kind of support this. But anyway, the point is eventually Noah and Ravna had a falling out.
Okay.
Something happened to drive them to one each other's throats, and they fought for decades. And they basically embraced and flung their child around each other. Maybe literally.
Welcome to Unlife. Go kill.
Yes. They've encouraged their childhood to embrace new fledgling as soldiers. So basically they were giving, essentially giving birth to the generals that would then give birth to the army.
So they're just jumping through the generations then.
Kind of, yeah. As far as all accounts, Noah's brood was far stronger, would be the Gangrel, but Ravna was far more cunning and wielded powers of deception.
Ooh, my favorite kinds of powers.
So at last, Ravna called down some sort of unholy devastation from the sky to destroy or disable most of Noah's forces. And the handful that survived fled west into Europe and Africa. The survivors then fought amongst themselves, scattering north, south, and west. Those who went north latched on to the progeny of the Siberian tribes and the Vikings, which is where Gangrels show up a lot in Norse kind of lineage.
Space wolves.
Pretty much. Well, you're bleeding two chapters together there. If they're vampires.
Well, I mean vampires, yeah, but I'm still talking like the bestial nature sort of thing.
That kind of thing. The connection to that kind of Viking bestial tribe. Those that went south prowled the African plains above the Sahara and became the shapeshifters of the Serengeti. The few vampires who fled eastward were presumably destroyed, and the majority went west, and it's for this from where most of the Gangrel clans claim lineage. No matter what their actual origin is, we do know that during the early days, the Gangrel basically shunned many of the civilizations. So they weren't really interested in participating in the Roman Emperor, the Roman empires, Carthage, things like that. They were always going to be on the fringes of society.
Right.
They did, however, fight often.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it just seems like they're the type of guys who's like, yeah, let's get a bunch of these guys fighting.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're going to, if you can, you're definitely want to pull them in on things like the Punic Wars. Most flock to the Ventru for basically to join into their battles. Obviously, you get really good prey.
Right.
If you can side on the...
Plus, you're probably culling their numbers, too.
True. Very much so. In Scandinavia, one particular Methuselah known as Odin held the Nordic peoples in a tight grip and ruled as a corporeal god, sending them down to raid the civilizations he despised in order for his warriors to earn the right of the embrace.
Hey, that makes perfect sense.
Pretty cool. So by the time the Dark Ages come around, the Renaissance and the loss of woodland kind of areas made life complicated for the Gangrel. So the Masquerade and the heavy decline of pagan religions made hunting difficult for them. So they also started basically gaining more attention and the anger of the werewolves.
Okay. Encroaching on their territory a bit more.
Yeah, when you kind of shrink the woodlands, it means that there's more likely that a pack is going to find.
Right, they're going to run into each other.
Pack. Yeah. So this is when basically many of the Gangrel left the Camarilla during this time, instead traveling as the Tarkus, basically unbound, leaving Europe completely in search for untouched wilderness or receding into those few tribal societies that still existed.
So these are kind of like the mountain men, the wild guy, the wild man.
100%, yes. If you think to the Dark Ages in the campaign that we played, like the Gangrel, like 5th edition or the 5th generation and 6th generation, one of them was like a hunter, and the other one was called the Force of Nature. And just randomly wandered around.
That was the guy that you one-shotted?
It would have. Just if you allowed me to attack him.
I made a guy that can do one thing.
One thing only, okay? So basically, in modern nights, following the Sabbat invasion of the East Coast, the Camarilla suffered another blow from when the Gangrel left. So this is actually kind of an interesting story, is that apparently there's a book series that details this, but there's a Justicar named Xavier. And Xavier basically was before the Inner Circle, and he was a Gangrel Justicar for the Camarilla, so he'd go out and enforce things. And he got into a pretty bad situation with something that was old, and it wiped out his pack.
Oh.
So he went back to the Inner Circle and basically said, hey, I just ran into an antediluvian, and it just murdered everybody I ever trusted in my life, and you need to do something about this. And the Inner Circle said, no, you didn't. You're hallucinating, and you can't talk to us about that. So it said that he then basically went before the Inner Circle, uttered a single sentence, and left. And upon his leaving of the Camarilla, all Gangrels slowly basically made their exit.
So what was the sentence?
I don't know.
Fuck this shit, I'm out.
That's a pretty good way to do it. Hey, why don't you guys go after the ancient Methuselah that's eating everybody?
Nah, just pretend it's not there.
Yeah, no. So, like I said, as we kind of mentioned in the beginning, Gangrel don't really have so much of a cohesive history because there really are the clan of loners.
Yeah.
But there is some sort of loose tie in the clan itself. Basically, any type of interaction between various Gangrels and the clan is always usually decided by rights.
Okay.
So they have kind of ancient, often oral traditional rights that are spread down, and most of them basically involve into one of two things. God, these are the Space Wolves.
I told you.
Gangrels are the Space Wolves. So usually rights and disputes are resolved by the right of either boasting or combat.
Boasting or combat?
So combat is usually basic and unarmed. Two Gangrel who know each other, they spar, basically fight, usually until one is either incapacitated or surrendering. So the question that you're about to ask, how does boasting work?
That sounds like more of a Ventru, like that would be their thing. It's boasting,
Yeah,
it's the trial of boasting.
I think Ventru would basically be more of
blathering,
like a deception. Like, what is the lie you're willing to tell?
Yeah,
yeah. But like
two truths and a lie, sort of thing.
Like that. Gangrel, however, boasting of the right of boasting involves the Gangrel making larger claims until one Gangrel backs down or asks for proof.
So it's kind of like liar's dice.
Yeah. The challenged Gangrel must then show proof of their claim or lose the right and their status. So basically, you're like, yeah, well, I killed a werewolf. You're like, oh, shoot. I think you did. Well, I killed 2 werewolves. Bull. I'm like, I gotcha. It's kind of interesting.
See, if that was me, I'd be like, one time I slept until noon. Prove it. I'll do it right now.
So basically, when any type of Gangrel formal organization needs to take place, it is usually placed around an aptly named gather, which is an occasional meeting where local and visiting Gangrel can exchange news, informations, stories, and decide on local matters. So you think like the Camarilla and their high tower are often having Elysium and some sort of museum or some sort of like social event. A gather could be basically that bar on the edge of the woods and just
a bonfire.
A bunch of smelly dudes show up and start telling each other stories, and they're like, "Hey, did you hear what happened here? Oh, I heard there's a pack moving in over here," and then and they go their own ways. So gathers can be used to form revels. A gangrel revel is essentially a call to battle.
Oh, okay.
So
See, I was thinking like a dance. Are you getting ready to do like a dance or something?
Well, there's spirits there.
Yeah, I suppose.
Maybe a dance with claws and fangs.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So oftentimes if a gather is taking place and the gangrel says, hey, did you guys hear about those werewolves coming in? They're like, let's see. Well, there's 10 of us. And yeah, let's go deal with that right now. So they'll often basically form parties to track down and destroy enemies such as kindred, Geru, or basically anybody else that invaded the clan's territory. There are also meetings called great gathers.
Okay.
And a great gather relies on a powerful gangrel who is respected by most or all of the clan to be called. And they're pretty rare. When one is called, any member of the clan who must travel to the meeting place. Because basically if you don't, then the people who do are going to come back looking for you.
Right. Like, why weren't you there?
Yeah. There's also grand revels, which basically can come from great gathers, which is essentially when the gangrel all declare war on something.
Trans fats.
That's kind of the moment where, like, if you're a prince of a place and you piss off on a gangrel, then you hear that they're, like, getting together.
Shit. Well, I need to travel overseas.
Yeah, because something's just going to disappear over time. So with their kind of separate and their, like, individualistic nature, it's no wonder that gangrels have actually kind of formed different types over the years. There's kind of different, not necessarily bloodlines, but basically definitely kind of offshoots. During the Dark Ages, there was an offshoot called the Greek gangrel.
Okay.
They essentially are, one of the ones we'll talk later is the modern city gangrel, but essentially they're the kind of the same thing. Basically, they're gangrel who have essentially focused on surviving in a civilized environment. Well, not civilized, but an urban environment. So
okay.
They stalk the cities of places like Constantinople and basically learn
Istanbul.
But yeah, they basically stalked dark cities and learned how to basically make their way into the places where like Nosferatu laid and like sewers and stuff like that, and kind of share that, like, you know, basically the dark side of the urban streets.
Right.
Their modern version of that is the City Gangrel. So they're kind of the same thing. They're also
just with a man bun.
Pretty much. I mean, it's like kind of when the hippie, you know, instead of going out in the woods, he decides to go crawling around in the filth and basically like, yeah.
All wearing tie-dye shirts.
Yeah. The City Gangrel are often thought of as kind of like coyotes.
Okay.
They're like the creatures from the wilderness who come to the edge of the wilderness and take advantage of like the perks of
the scraps that they can pull from society.
Exactly. They do often like prey in cities. They have a association with the Sabbat.
Okay, makes sense.
In fact, the Gangrel and Tribu are basically all pretty much City Gangrel because the Sabbat moves into an area, and so they basically want angry clawed
right
doing stuff. Unlike country gangrel, who can afford their animalistic ways to take over appearance, the City Gangrel kind of can't. They have to adopt a more Nosferatu-like approach.
Yeah.
So then to outward appearances, they seem human. They dress appropriate, you know, but City Gangrel are still Sabbat vampires, and basically that means they're heavy-duty predators. The disguise is adopted so that they can camouflage themselves among the people. Sorry. I think City Gangrel actually earned the ability to get obfuscate.
I mean, it would make sense.
So they trade obfuscate for resilience or something. Like they trade one of their things for obfuscate.
I mean, I can't imagine it being protean or animalism.
No, that's kind of like too tied to them. There's also the country gangrel,
Gangle. I like the gangles.
Which they resemble the independent and Camarilla gangrel, but they're savage, vicious hunters. They're more comfortable in the wilds than between the cities than the cities themselves. So the Sabbat recently have seen an influx of gangrel converts from the Camarilla since they left. So many of these kind of country gangrel or hunters are essentially have joined the Sabbat as assassins and scouts. They are usually referred to in the Sabbat as hunters. They travel between cities and basically deal with threats like lupines and, you know, the other dark things that wander the woods at night. So travel between cities, even in Masquerade, is usually dangerous. It's not something that any gangrel, upstanding vampire is going to take lightly.
Right.
The gangrel are one of those things that are out in the dark. So then there's an interesting one.
Okay.
So
I mean, this has all been interesting so far, but
Yeah, there are the Gangrel Mariners.
Oh, okay. I mean, that seems like a very specialized.
Yeah, so they're called the Aquari, and they basically, the Tremere call them the Aquari, and the Mariners, of course, reject that name and consider they're a minuscule offshoot of the main Gangrel clan. And they take advantage of a particular quirk of vampirism that they don't need to breathe
Right.
air.
So they're just underwater all the time?
So they live and make their homes underwater.
Well, that freaks me out.
So with the exception of their clan weakness, all apparent features of the bloodline appear to be acquired rather than inborn. So that's the vampire bloodline is not necessarily transferred from sire to sire, but instead basically developed.
So it's just basically gangrels that are just like, you know what, I want to live in a pineapple under the sea, and they just head to the water.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it's definitely the scholars think that there's only maybe 30 or more of them at any given time in the world. It's not like something that happens very often. But basically through their mastery of protein and stuff and altering their form, they can essentially adapt to aquatic life, which means that they're in a place that basically has no threats to them.
Right.
We know from the various werewolf games that this ocean is a scary place for spirits and stuff. So if you're a vampire down there, you're just like alpha predator.
Right.
Because, I mean, it doesn't matter if something big like a shark eats you because you can just chew your way out.
Right.
And you're not worried about the sun, right?
Right.
So
I mean, do they feed on aquatic life?
Definitely. They also can stalk coastlines and stuff like that. Really, like, emerge out as kind of like the horror from the Black Lagoon kind of stuff. They do employ protean, particularly a version of it, which gives them a sonar ability instead of night vision. And it gives them razor sharp webbed hands instead of claws.
See, that's the type of thing that's like they had like tentacle suction cup things on their hands, and
it's kind of cool.
That creeps me out. I don't like that.
Yeah. So overall, the Gangrel are considered basically the most feral and predatory of all kindred. And because of their reclusive nature, animalistic tendencies, and loose organization, they're basically the least social of canites. So it's no wonder that they don't really show up in Camarilla courts.
Right.
It was not that big of a surprise when they left the Camarilla. Basically,
everybody was just waiting for it to happen.
Yeah, there was always a loose tie holding them, So the Gangrel also have a strong tie to the Roma or the Gypsies. And there's a kind of that sets them at odd with the Ravnos, who also have basically this weird like tie to them. So the Gangrel will often like shelter traveling Roma. However,
kind of kindred spirits.
Yeah, except that they basically hate the Ravnos. So if they believe their ancestry kind of like, then the Ravnos basically both their progenitors basically attacked each other.
Right.
But this has also led to the Ravnos, unfortunately, even though they're really great as a clan at disguise and lying and stuff like that, when the world is filled with predators that directly hate you.
Yeah.
That clan force is like constantly confronted with extinction. So some Gangrel do kind of fight the mold. They break the mold, and they do basically embrace technology and things like that. So that's definitely something that can happen. Often many higher generation Gangrel, so basically the newer Gangrel that were embraced, tend to still try to like make peace with their normal lives, but they still feel the calling of the woods and the animal within.
That pull is still there.
Absolutely. So yeah, like I said, there's not a lot of like history to the clan that we can talk about here. So I thought we kind of maybe we can explore some of the benefits that the clan has. But before we do that, maybe we'll talk a little bit about one shining example of a Gangrel. Which is the character of Beckett.
Okay. Yep.
So if you've played Vampire the Bloodlines, Beckett is a basically anthropologist / researcher who shows up and basically kind of interacts with you during kind of the game overall and has a strong influence on the end of the game.
Yeah, he's looking for a casket.
Yeah. So Beckett, most people believe, was British. He was a British embraced vampire. He's also one of the greatest nodist historians. So basically the people that believe that Cain and his lineage actually is the accurate description of where vampires came from. He also, I think, doesn't consider himself an archaeologist.
Okay.
He calls himself something else. Basically, he's also one of the most prolifically written about. So we're not going to go into the extensive lore on him, but we're going to talk about like some pieces of it. Basically, people have pieced together that he's probably from England and he was embraced in Oxford.
Okay.
He maintains strong ties to the British homeland. He has a haven beneath the Cavella Arms in Silchester.
Okay.
Sure
I know that place.
Yeah, of course. He quickly became delusioned with vampire society and chose the way of the autarchus. So basically, like, he's one of these people who generally sticks out of politics and goes from place to place kind of on his own. He basically met Aristotle de Laurent, who introduced him to his studies and became kind of his adopted sire.
Gotcha.
So he's a bit of a rare gangrel because he's well-connected and educated, and he has cultivated contacts and allies across the world, which is why he shows up in a lot of the books.
Right.
His allies are both through the ranks of the mortal and the supernatural so few know him well because, you have to maintain an air of anonymity.
Right.
His closest allies are his erstwhile companions Lucitia and the ravening prophet Anatole.
Oh, goodness.
His longtime adversary and competitor is the Temichek scholar Sasha Vikos.
Oh, Sasha.
Like we know who half these people are. So basically known for coming and going, and where he appeases, he always basically seems to be hunting down some interesting item or scrap of lore, trying to put together basically his, collection of information on the Cainite history or the Cainite legend, and, trying to reassemble the Book of Nod,
right?
Those kind of things. Basically, he is a foremost kindred scholar for his theory that the story of Cain and Abel is actually... he's notorious among kindred scholars for his theory that the story of Cain and Abel is actually a myth representing human civilization as a move from hunter-gatherer to an agrarian society. That's actually, I think, directly ripped off the game. That's one of the things he talks about.
Yep.
How this is connected to vampirism, he's not sure, but if anyone can find the evidence to discover the truth, Beckett can. His knowledge of ancient lore and linguistics and fighting skills are perfectly complemented by his mastery of a number of disciplines, including thaumaturgy.
Ooh, that's a rare one for a gangrel to have.
Yeah. His skill with the gangrel trademark disciplines is such that he can also travel as a wolf. And he's known to run the length of a football field and under the scorching sun. So he can actually...
Oh.
Yeah, he can actually pop out during... I mean, he's going to take damage, but basically he could move that quickly and he could actually escape a lot of bad situations by running directly into sunlight.
But you're not going to have too many other vampires chasing after you at that point.
No. He has 2 beast marks, which is basically, I think, the previous version of their clan Bane.
Okay.
One is cat-like red eyes with crescent-shaped pupils, which glow faintly. And hands and forearms covered in coarse hairs and claw-like nails, forcing him to keep them covered and wear shaded glasses among mortals.
I vaguely remember that from the video game.
Yeah. So, among his many notable adventures. In 2001, Beckett discovered the Methuselah Manella, which we talked about in Helena. So basically Helen of Troy, and her arch nemesis. He was also pulled into the battle involving the mummy Nicholas Sforza Kahoptep.
Okay.
Once again, he fought a mummy.
Yeah. I mean, that's cool.
He discovered Helen of Troy in Chicago and then went and fought a mummy. In 2004, following up the rumors of Cain's coffin, Beckett traveled to Los Angeles to study the anchor and sarcophagus. He worked with the Prince of Los Angeles, Sebastian LaCroix, to help the later open the sarcophagus before its key was retrieved. Succumbing to the increasing sense of unease which blanketed the city, Beckett just fled.
I'm just going to get the fuck out of here.
That's why he's just like, I'm out. That's why Smiling Jack's there.
I know. Then you got Smiling Jack sitting there with him.
Yeah. In 2005, while trying to free his friend, the Nosferatu Oculus, Beckett broke through a ward on an ancient Cappadocian city of Kamakli. By doing this, he not only freed Oculus, but he also freed the Sombra Antediluvian, bringing about one of the semi-canon versions of Gehenna.
Oh, wow.
I believe that's specifically an entire book stories. So Beckett is kind of a mover and shaker during a very particular time, as you can see, late 90s, early 2000s, when these books were being written.
Yep.
He was in the game. He was basically kind of a favorite to put out there as like an anchor to the mythos and to the kind of like that fun way of poking at it, whether it's real or is it not real. But at the same time, he's basically Vampire Indiana Jones.
Right.
So it's pretty cool that he pretty much woke up the
right.
Antediluvian.
That's a little scary. I mean, especially La Sombra.
Person who basically was born from the abyss.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Where are they now?
Yeah, a lot of vampires would really like that. So, Gangrel have access to the following disciplines: animalism, fortitude. So we've already talked at length on both of those.
Yep.
And the unique one, which is they're kind of masters of, which is Protean. So they say Protean is part of God's curse upon Kang in the aspect that it peels away the facade of humanity every vampire has to uphold, revealing the beast within their soul. It is the signature discipline of the Gangrel, which means basically that no other clan has access to it by default. Yep. It's also used by the Ministry, but like Ministry only use it, a variant of it, which is Serpentis. So they use basically that form to do...
which is very cool.
Also, the Tamiche basically use it along with Dominate in a form to create the vicissitude, which is their ability to fleshcraft. So Serpentis and vicissitude are not like pure disciplines. They're actually derived from Protean. So if you're a Gangrel and you're recently embraced, what kind of things can you do with Protean? Well, to start off with, you can see in the dark, right? Eyes of the beast. So your eyes get a red gleam, and you can basically have sight even in the total absence of light.
Nice.
You also can basically alter your mass and density.
Okay.
Effectively making yourself be light as a feather or weightless, which allows you to jump distances, almost kind of float, which gains more flexibility to your acrobatics.
I suppose, yeah.
The big one most people go for is obviously their second level ability, which is feral weapons. This is where basically your natural weapons of your claws and your fangs gain monstrous proportions, and you can they kind of act like daggers almost. So this is the point where they don't, in the new version, they don't do aggravated damage.
Well, I was going to say, because this is the point where it's like Gangrels are really scary.
But vampires who receive damage from feral weapons cannot have it. So basically, it fills up 2 bashing damage per damage. So it is like a half in between aggravated and both.
Okay.
It racks up just as quickly, but you don't have the effect of the healing part of it.
Okay.
Like you could basically...
You could still heal through it.
Yeah, it's not magical damage like it was before. Their third level's abilities, they start getting into basically their kind of classic earth meld, where they become part of the soil. Really handy if they want to go to sleep.
Extremely handy.
And shape change, where they can change it to basically any form that has their same amount of mass.
Okay.
So this is where they do things usually like a wolf or some sort of like panther or like a giant snake or something, because they have to maintain the physicality of their body. If they get a little bit better about that, they can actually go into metamorphosis, which is basically where they can actually change their mass. So now they can turn into things like bats and ravens and like stuff like that. Snakes.
That's useful.
Yeah. And then the pinnacle, the form basically is where they become mist itself. And that's the like...
Very difficult to fight mist.
Yeah. Basically untouchable anything other than fire, sunlight, or supernatural aggression.
Supernatural aggression?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the...
I'm so angry, I praise Jesus. It burns.
They also have the ability, and I think this is something the Ministry and the Setites do too, which is called the unfettered heart. They basically can manipulate the location of their heart within their body, which contains the heart blood, the source of the vampire, so it makes them very hard to stake them. And then they can, if they use this in concert with other disciplines, they can get the ability to keep the heart outside their body.
Yes, that was an ability that Setites had, and Hashtep used it.
Pretty freaking handy if that is your only weakness, right? It's like, I'm not even here, man. You just...
Oh, you stabbed me. Well, I don't care.
So I guess the question kind of really comes down to is, why would you want to play a Gangrel, right?
Me personally, I probably wouldn't.
Really?
It's just not my cup of tea.
I think
it's kind of the same thing with the Toreador. It's two halves of something that don't tickle an itch for me, I guess.
It's on the nose a little bit too much.
Yeah.
I think the Gangrel definitely represent like the most just raw
aggression
and physical power. I mean, that's one of the reasons why in Requiem, basically the Gangrel took the place of like the Bruja and the Gangrel, where basically they're kind of a combination of both. In Masquerade, they don't really have the the rage as much. I mean, they are aggressive, but they're aggressive as predators.
Right.
You know? So, like, if you're the guy who wants to play werewolf and everybody wants to play vampire instead,
play a gangrel.
You might be playing a gangrel. Also, if you're just like the person who wants to play the hippie who likes to go hang out with flowers and talk to animals, you can kind of play gangrel. Yeah,
you really can. I mean, I guess, yeah, I didn't see it from that aspect originally when I said I wouldn't play it, but I can see it as kind of like the dirt guy, you know, where it's just like, hey, I just want to stay out here, smoke weed and relax, you know, and if you get too close, I'll rip your fucking throat out.
Yeah, I could do some cool stuff with my fingers. Shink. I think there are the gangrel tend to be basically, they tend, if I understand this correctly, they tend to fill kind of splat books with multiple characters in every setting because they're kind of the people that you deal with as a threat initially. So when you're not talking about like some ancient guy waking up, you're talking about like out of the initial embrace, the gangrel are often the most scary because they're the ones who almost immediately get access to stuff that will send you to your final death. So beside the Bruja, the gangrel are definitely going to be predators. They're going to be threats that have to be dealt with. They're going to come into stories where they deal with, hey, what is it like having this little element of power in this context, even though that power might be fleeting.
Right.
That power might be manipulated. That power might make you go kill a parent in front of a kid.
Maybe, yeah.
But yeah, those kind of stories too. Also, there's a lot of times where the gangrel basically, since they're so nomadic and they're so kind of infused into all the different, I hate to use the word primal, but like all the different like kind of native cultures, they're kind of the vampires that you do find when you do dig into them. So if you go into like basically Native Americans and stuff like that, and you have histories of like, you know, the flesh walkers,
Wendigo,
yeah, stuff like that, often like that's probably connected to either werewolves or often gangrel. So basically some of the characters that have been invented in some of the books, I think Milwaukee by Night, which is like a weird thing that it exists.
Milwaukee by Night.
I'm serious.
Right.
Some
It's
of those
going to go along with our Jackson by Night.
Yeah. Some of those have like characters where they're like Native American gangrel that show up and they kind of, you know, basically are like, oh, hey, we heard that you were wandering to the, you know, the reservation and you were trying to mess with people out there. Me and my 3 cousins are going to like kill you now. You know, like, and
but we're going to do it respectfully.
Man, run back into the wood, you know, into the woods. Like I said, so I
don't worry. We'll use every part of your body.
And of course, there's always the concept of playing against the type. You know, so in our campaign, we had a gangrel who was basically a boardroom shark.
Yeah.
I always enjoyed that character.
I didn't know they were a gangrel until you told me.
That was kind of the point, right? Like this person who is always supposed to be menacing.
Yeah.
And is always there, and you're like, why is he menacing so much? It's like, well, because he's like, I could eat you. I really could eat you if I wanted to.
It's like all up to that point where like the sheriff is the really scary guy. We're like, oh no, maybe not.
Yeah, the sheriff was just the guy who's like very hard to kill.
Right.
But there's a reason why Torvin is the seneschal. And because people are like, sir, could we talk to the no.
Okay.
So yeah, I think the gangrel is an interesting clan. I do think that they suffer from probably playing to their type too quickly.
Yeah. You're right. I mean, like I said, I hit that stereotype pretty quick with the, you know, they're just the you know, wild man, aggressive, whatever. But yeah, you absolutely can do that. Any profession or any hobby where it's just like, I want to be the best and I need to, you know, single out the weak and destroy them. Like you could totally be gangrel.
Yeah, I think to that thing, I like gangrel, like modern day gangrel, especially freshly embraced would be like gym bros. You know, like, come on, bro, do you get lift? Did you get gains, man?
Do you even lift?
Do you even lift? You know, and you could definitely kind of see them getting into that kind of that predatory, disturbing predatory nature. Who was that dude? I don't even want to bring up the name, but the alpha dude who is like a piece of crap online.
Which one?
I know, right? He always poses with like his shirt off, and he's like, I don't want a woman. I want a woman to serve.
Holy crap! Why can't I think of his name? The dude that got arrested.
Yeah, that dude would be a gang.
Yeah,
right. Like just some piece of crap.
I'm the alpha.
It's all about alpha. I get disgusted at the concept that I have to eat. You know, and you're like, what?
Why can't I think of his name?
Tate.
Oh yeah, Andrew Tate. Jeez, there you go.
Forget that guy.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Mr.
that dude,
penis head.
Yeah, that dude would be like a gangrel, you know, like that cool kind of. So like, I think there's a lot of different ways you can play it.
I would love to see him in a vampire game as a gangrel, you know, just doing his thing, being a dickhead about everything, and then like a Venture walks in and was just like, "Hey, you're not gonna have a good time," and like just takes care of him.
Well, Venture just comes and is like, "You should give me a hand, like your right hand. Tear it off and give it to me."
Yeah, pretty much.
Here it is. Why did I do that?
Oh God, you should look behind you, but don't move your shoulders.
Cracking noise. Yeah, I think we've seen one gangrel played kind of
poorly.
Yeah, okay, maybe, but like I think that if you dive into that, I think Requiem kind of had that problem where like you know that was the violent clan.
Yeah.
So I think in a place where you do have Bruja and Nosferatu kind of share the kind of bruiser group, Gangrel maybe has some more subtlety to it.
Yeah.
So, plus the whole idea really that if you're interested in a character who could literally walk out into the woods and just go into the mud and sleep.
Right.
That's insane.
Like they're literally like, "Hey, is there a park nearby? Yeah. Okay. I'll see you tomorrow."
Like, for the rest of the vampire, like, we have to find a place to sleep. And you're like, "I got this on me. I'm out," you know.
Or just I don't know what you guys are gonna do.
Oh, weird. You guys are caught in this situation. I'm missed. Bye. What?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so I think, yeah. I think they require a person who knows what not to fall, the traps to fall into, and basically takes a good kind of stab at them. And I think in our future detailings in Florida, we'll have some kind of interesting takes on them.
Yeah, honestly, the few takes that you've mentioned here have honestly put some thoughts in my head. So
it's the dude who he passed away, Irwin.
Oh, the crocodile hunter.
Yeah,
Steve Irwin.
Yeah. Crikey, today I got myself a Nosferatu.
I'm going to stick my finger up its bum. That'll really piss him off.
That'd be pretty cool. So yeah, hey, give it a try. Think about it. Just don't be a raving lunatic, because it doesn't matter what clan you involve yourself with. If you go run up and start like mouthing off to people, you're likely to get your head.
Yeah, somebody will knock you down a peg. Doesn't matter who you are.
Well, any final thoughts on the Gangrel?
No, I honestly, you've changed my mind. I sounds like a fun clan. I might make one in the future.
I look forward to the horrific invention that you'll no doubt create.
Me too.
All right, guys, we'll catch you next time.
Later.